Today on JiK Labs, we dive a little bit deeper into the pivot table with pivot charts. Let's get started. Now that you have Excel open and ready to go, you're going to see we are where we left off on the last few videos with our JiK Labs sales data. So now we want to make some charts to represent our findings. So there's a couple ways we can go about that. Since we already have the pivot table made, we're going to just click somewhere in the confines of our pivot table, and then we're going to bring up the pivot table analyze tab, and then right here on the top right of the ribbon we can see pivot chart. We can click on that guy. It brings up a new window for us, and it's a lot like when you're making a chart just in Excel. So we can decide what we want to do, line, pie, so on and so forth, columns. Let's just do this one and click OK. We've done whole videos on how to make charts in Excel. We'll link that video up here for you. The process is a little bit different because you're using a pivot table, but this insert a chart process is the same. So we're going to go ahead and click OK, and here we go. It's a little bit big. We'll make it a little bit smaller, and here we go. It's on our screen. We can select the months, dates, just like you would on the pivot table. We could even select all or none of the salespeople. In this case, let's just show Alice's sales. Hit OK. And there we go. It is updated for us. All that information, it's not only updated the chart, but it's also updated the pivot table. We just made changes on the chart, but now we're going to come to the pivot table and say select all, excluding the blanks, and hit OK. And now we see that our pivot chart has updated as well. So if we add in GP dollars, we check that off, we're going to see, well, all that's the same as our sum of CalcCom. Because if you remember, we made that as a new field / equation in our pivot table, which is the sum of the sales minus the sum of the cost. But if you add that in, it shows both on your chart as well as your pivot table. Same thing, if you remove it, everything reverts back to normal. So we'll see we have three values reporting on our chart. Well, we can see sum of sales and sum of our GP dollars, but we don't see the count of invoices. Why is that? Well, because it is so small. See 25 when we're dealing with thousands of dollars on the main axis. So if we highlight our legend and come over to values and we highlight the cost of inventory, we can come into our right hand side and we can say legend entry options, and we're going to click that little down drop arrow and we're going to come down to series count of invoice number. We're going to select that guy, and now you can see just barely that they're highlighted. Well, now we want to come over to the graph, the series options, and what we want to do is we want to put that on a secondary axis. We're going to tweak our settings a little bit, and with our gap width we made a little bit bigger, and that has made our columns a little bit smaller. So now that we've added the secondary axis, you can see on the left hand side we have sales dollars, and on the right hand side we have count of invoice numbers. So now have the two separate axes, so you can easily now see this data, because before it was non-existent on our chart. So that is one way how to make a pivot chart. Let's go back to our data. So once again, we're going to select inside our data. We're going to come up to the insert ribbon. Aside from on the left hand side clicking pivot table, we're going to come over to about the middle and we're going to see pivot chart. We're going to hit that down drop arrow and we're going to have the choice of a pivot chart or a pivot chart in table. So let's just go pivot chart. Again, it pops up with a new window for us to look at. Very similar to creating the pivot table. Yes, that's our range. We wanted to go on a new worksheet, and then we're just going to click OK. So let's go salesperson. And as you can see, it's still making a pivot table on the side for us. There's no data yet because all we have is our first set of our axes. So let's come in here and do invoice number. And it's going to do sum of invoice number. Of course, we don't want that. So we're going to change that to count and hit OK. And here we go. Now we have all of our totals. But now we want to add in sales amount, which is the sum of sales, and immediately we can see that the count of invoice number has disappeared because we have added in a much larger value. So once again, we're going to come in series for count of invoice number. We're going to select the series option, and we're going to make that a second dairy axis. So we don't really like how this is looking. So we can right click on this guy and we're going to say change chart type. We're going to come in here and get this pop-up window. Again, they have recents, templates, and also they have recommended charts. But we're just going to select through here and we're going to use the line and we're going to come down the combo because that is what is best going to fit our data. So we're going to come in here. We want invoice count on the secondary axis, meaning that they're going to be the bars, and we can even change this if we want it. And once we have everything selected how we want, we can just go ahead and click OK. And now we can see we have everything a little bit cleaner and easier to see. So wait a minute. All I got is this format chart area stuff here on the right hand side. But I want to go back and add some fields or anything to my pivot table. What gives? Well, on the very right hand side, which I am covering at the moment, so we're going to come over here and see right here above format chart area, we can click on pivot table fields and we're going to see that our pivot table fields have reappeared. And we can come in and add in costs and do what we need to do or revert things back. As you can see, when we added in the costs, it reverted back to our chart. So we would have to go back and edit our chart type once again. So let's say we want to print our pivot chart. Well, let's just hit Control P and we're going to see a preview that is just our chart, which is great. That's because we were selected in our chart. Let's hit Escape real quick and just select anywhere in the confines of the worksheet. We'll hit Control P again and then you're going to see we're not getting the chart and we're over 3 different pages, which is not what anybody wants. So again, if you want to print the chart, you can select in the confines of the chart and hit Control P and then you will just get the chart. If you're outside the chart, you're going to get the entire worksheet. Thank you all for joining us today as we explored the pivot chart in conjunction with the pivot table. We have quickly looked at the pivot chart today, so if you have any questions, please leave them down below. This may be our last video for a while for the pivot charts as we're moving on to a new topic. We just wanted to give you a little video series to get you started with one of the most useful tools that many people find in Microsoft Excel. Thank you all for watching and we'll see you all next week. We've done, what do we do?